On January 17, 2008, young mother Denise Amber Lee was abducted from her home. Denise was an incredibly brave woman who fought back and called out even when under threat. She made a 911 call right under her kidnapper's nose, and she got lucky. While in her abductor's car, she was seen by not one, but 2 eyewitnesses. All of that should mean that Denise Amber Lee is alive today. But thanks to a botched 911 response, what should have been a thwarted kidnapping turned into something much, much worse. Nathan and Amber Lee met in high school. She was shy and bookish, and he was popular and athletic. After he graduated, and while she was still a senior, she screwed up her courage and asked him out.
It was kind of awkward because, we had just met, and, Valentine's Day was already there, and we both didn't know what, what we should do. We were falling in love. I ended up getting her just a little, probably $40, ring with a heart on it.
17 months later, Denise and Nathan got married. They were eager to start a family, and by the time Denise was 21, she was a stay-at-home mom to 2 young boys. The couple rented a house just south of Sarasota, Florida. January 17, 2008, Nathan called his wife from work at 11:21 a.m. The couple had a conversation about the nice weather. Denise told Nathan that she had already opened the windows in the house. After lunch, Denise took her eldest son out to the back porch to cut his hair. Around 2:30 p.m., Denise's neighbor, Jennifer Eckhart, noticed a green Camaro driving very slowly through the neighborhood. At first, Jennifer assumed the driver was lost because he drove past her house multiple times. Finally, the Camaro pulled into Denise's driveway. Assuming the driver had found the address he was looking for, Jennifer stopped paying attention until she saw the car leave again 10 minutes later. Half an hour later, Nathan called Denise on his way home from work. There was no response from his wife. This was so unusual that he continued to call her back, phoning her 8 times during his 25-minute drive home. When he got home, Nathan knew something was wrong. His sons, 6 months and 2 years old, had been left alone in the house. His wife's keys and cell phone had been left behind. And remember how Denise had said that she left the windows open?
I started freaking about then. And then I looked at the windows. I noticed it was hot in the house. And I noticed the windows were pushed down, but they weren't shut and latched. They were just like pushed down, like somebody pushed them down in a hurry.
Nathan called 911.
Northport Emergency?
Yes, I'm at 7912 Tor Avenue. I just got home from work, and my wife, I can't find her. My kids were in the house, and I don't know where she is. I've looked every single place.
Nathan then did something very smart. He called his father-in-law, Detective Rick Goff.
I go, hey, you guys want to come over and eat? That's the first thing I ask him as soon as he called. He goes, I can't. Denise is missing.
Rick's connections with the police meant that he was able to make some phone calls and get his daughter's case taken very seriously. Not only that, but he convinced his fellow police officers to look beyond Denise's husband, when normally they might focus all of their suspicions. Canvassing the neighborhood meant that the Sarasota police got Jennifer's tip about the green Camaro. Meanwhile, a man named Harold Muxlow was visited by his cousin, Michael King. Pulling up to Harold's house in a green Camaro, Michael got out and requested to borrow a shovel, a gas can, and a flashlight. What did Michael want the shovel and gas for, Harold wondered. Michael told him that he had stalled a riding lawnmower in a ditch. Then Harold heard a woman's voice shout, "Call the cops," from the backseat of the car. He watched Michael shove a woman's head down and out of sight.
So I turned back around and started walking down there, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it," and he took off.
Here's the wild part. Harold didn't call the police. He later said it was because he knew Michael often had relationship drama and thought that this was just more of the same. Here's a hot tip. I don't care how close you are to your cousins. If you hear a woman calling for help from the back of a car, call the cops. Here's an even hotter tip. If you think relationship drama means routinely keeping women captive in your car while they call for the police, you should probably never date anyone, ever. Clearly, Harold knew something was up, because while he didn't call the police, he did call his daughter Sabrina, and she called the police. Good girl, Sabrina. You deserve better uncles.
Where would he be going with this female?
he came over to my dad's house, borrowed a shovel, a gas tank, and something else.
Okay, we've been looking for this female. You are just so wonderful to call us and give us this information, okay?
Sabrina told 911 her uncle's name, Michael King. The fact that he drove a green Camaro was a strong hint that he was the one who took Denise. While Michael was busy picking up supplies, Denise managed to steal his cell phone and call 911 from the car. The audio from that call is fuzzy, but you can still hear Denise brilliantly trying to answer the operator's questions without tipping off Michael that she is on the phone. In this clip, you can hear 911 ask Denise where she is, and she turns the question around to Michael.
What is the address that you're at? Hello, ma'am? Where are we going? I gotta go up and around now. Up and around where?
The conversation lasts for nearly 6 minutes before Michael even realizes that Denise has his phone. Unfortunately, police weren't able to trace the call to an exact location, but they did get a general area from cell phone pings. Around 6:30 p.m., Jane Kowalski was sitting in traffic when she heard screaming from the car next to hers at a stoplight. She also saw a hand reach up and slap at the backseat window.
Complete, just terrifying, screaming, loud. I mean, I've never heard anything like that. So I looked over at him and I saw the man, and I sort of gave him a look like, what's going on in your car?
You made eye contact?
Oh, absolutely. Well, all of a sudden after that, a hand came up and started banging on the passenger window.
Believing she was witnessing a child abduction, Jane Kowalski called 911. Here's where things went wrong. Jane's call was routed not to Sarasota police, who were handling Denise's case, but to Charlotte County. The 911 operator did not log the tip into the computer as it is usually done. Instead, believing that it would be faster, she relayed information verbally to 2 dispatchers at the station. Like a scene out of the Three Stooges, each dispatcher thought that the other had dealt with the tip and radioed out. The actual 911 operator didn't log the tip until the phone call was over. And even though Jane Kowalski was on the phone for 8 minutes as she drove in front of the Camaro, no police were ever dispatched. Eventually, the Camaro took a hard left turn and Jane lost him in traffic. For nearly 3 hours, there was no more sign of Denise. During this time, Harold Muxlow decided to call the police about his cousin's weird behavior, though he tried to do it anonymously from a payphone at 7-Eleven. He wasn't able to supply any new information, but he did confirm that the driver of the Camaro was Michael King. Then, at 9:16 p.m., police pulled over the green Camaro.
He was a little apprehensive at first, showing his hands. At one point in time, he got a little resistant, got him back to the vehicle.
Did he say anything?
There was a lot of things that were uttered during the course of the time.
At this point, evidence from Harold Muxlow, his daughter Sabrina, and Denise's neighbor made it clear that this was the vehicle and the driver they were looking for. But Denise was no longer in the car.
We did locate a piece of paper on the floorboard of the vehicle, had a footprint. There was a gas can on the passenger seat. In the rear of the vehicle, there was a blanket, a ring, partially a spade that appeared to have been used.
The ring police found at the back of the Camaro was the ring that Nathan had given Denise for their first Valentine's Day. When he was arrested, Michael King came up with an absolutely ingenious cover story. He told police that he was also a kidnapping victim, that he and Denise had been kidnapped together, and he was blindfolded so he couldn't see what happened to her. Sorry, did I say an ingenious cover story? I meant the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Hey Mike, if you were kidnapped and then escaped, why were you driving around calmly in your car when the police picked you up? How come your cousin was a witness to the fact that you were definitely not blindfolded when you came to pick up a shovel? Just, come on, dude. Anyway, Michael kept up the story for quite a long time. Police pretended to go along with it, hoping that his descriptions of the fictional kidnapping might give them clues about the real one. But Michael didn't lead them to Denise, so eventually police officers abandoned the pretense and charged him with kidnapping. Meanwhile, police and K-9 units were searching for Denise. They looked in a perimeter around the area where Michael had been stopped, and eventually they found what they had feared, a shallow grave. Sometime between being stopped in traffic and Michael being pulled over, he had raped and murdered Denise Amber Lee. Her cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. There was never any connection found between Michael King and Denise Amber Lee. As far as we can tell, the abduction was more or less random. The case was as close to a slam dunk as it is possible to get. The evidence found in Michael's car, paired with the eyewitness accounts and the fact that his semen was on her body, made it pretty clear that Michael King had kidnapped and raped Denise. His defense team tried to spin a story where King had an accomplice, that is to say, they admitted to the kidnapping and rape, but said it was possible someone else did the actual murder. This was clearly nonsense, and Michael King was sentenced to death. He is currently on death row in Florida.
For the murder of Denise Amber Lee, the defendant is sentenced to be put to death in the manner prescribed by law.
It wasn't until after Denise's body was found that the biggest mistake of the case was revealed. After she heard about Michael King's arrest, Jane Kowalski contacted police, assuming they'd want to talk to her as a witness. But because her phone call had been routed to the wrong county, police on the Denise Lee case had never even heard her tip.
I didn't know who she was, but I definitely recognized him, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I ended up calling the Northport Police Department and said, I'm the 911 caller who called in. Do you need any more information from me? And they didn't know who I was.
It's impossible to say what would have happened if Jane Kowalski's call had made it to the right station, if it had been logged properly, or if the dispatchers had sent a car. But that phone call was 8 minutes long, and Kowalski was giving dispatchers the exact location of the Camaro when Denise was still alive. At the time, there were 4 patrol cars within a 1-mile radius. It's very likely that this mistake cost Denise her life. Nathan sued the Charlotte County 911 department and received a $1.25 million settlement in 2012 to be split between himself, his 2 sons, and Denise's father. Since then, Nathan has devoted his entire life to promoting the establishment of proper training for 911 operators. He'd formed the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, which continues to push for proper training all over the country. The Denise Amber Lee Act was signed into law in 2008. It requires emergency call takers to undergo 232 hours of improved 911 operator training. The act was passed unanimously by the Florida legislature. But like a lot of 911 operator training in the United States, those 232 hours are completely voluntary. Thanks for watching Beyond Crime. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support more true crime content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. If you'd like to donate to the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, visit deniseamberlee.org.